Continuing where we left off from our last tutorial, we're going to go ahead and take this trigger and set it up so that it will actually spawn creatures from these specific creature placers. And to do that, we're going to go have to jump into Visual Studio. So let's go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of room. I'm just going to click and drag from 17 down and just delete everything that's actually in those lines. Go ahead and tab in once so that our cursor is underneath the onBegin. And what we need to add in is information that we already have. So this right here. So this name, this trigger, we need to go ahead and get that information. So we can just double click on that, copy that, come back down here and paste it in. So next we want to go ahead and put in a dot. Now what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, that trigger, we need something inside of it. And the thing inside of it that we need is we need to be listening for a triggered event. So we'll go ahead and just type that in. The next thing that we want to do is we're going to take that triggered event and we're going to go ahead and subscribe to it. And at the end of this, we're going to go ahead and add in a couple of brackets. Now we're going to get a little error here at the end, and that's okay, that little squiggly that you see right there, because that is letting us know that, hey, I'm still looking for something. And before we give verse that information, let's talk about what we just created, because that line 17 there is quite literally an event binding line of code. So let's take a look at that inside of UEFN just to kind of see what we've done. So back over here, when our device is actually selected, we can scroll to the very bottom, and this little section down here that says User Options Events, you can see it says On Triggered. So hey, cool, we can use this. So this is something familiar if you're inside of UEFN that you will find inside of Verse. And if you're coming from the Fortnite creative side, this is quite literally what we're working with here too. So this is literally just an on-triggered event. So now you have an idea of how you can use it both inside of UEFN, Fortnite Creative, and now here inside of Verse. Now back over here inside of Verse, let's continue where we left off and actually add in the piece of information that Verse is looking for right here. And at this point, when that triggered event actually fires, what we want to do is go ahead and spawn that first wave. So let's go ahead and just type in the word spawn wave 1. And you'll see that we still have an error, and that's because we haven't actually created the function that is going to actually spawn all these critters. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now to make it real easy, I'm just going to double click on this spawn wave 1. I'm going to copy it, and then at the very end of line 17, I'm going to hit enter a few times. So I'm down on 19 and then paste this in here. Now I don't want it sitting right here. I actually want to move this over just a little bit, right? So with my cursor right there where it is, I'm going to hold shift and hit tab, and I'll actually push it back a little bit. So the next thing we need to do is add in a couple of brackets like so. And then I'm going to say space, I'm going to have a colon, and then we're going to type in the word void, space, and then equals. Now this isn't super important for what we're doing, but essentially this little bit that we added here at the end is just saying we're not returning any information. So from here, we're going to hit enter, and we're going to type in the word for, because we're going to create a for loop. And essentially, it's going to say for each one of these creature placers, we want to make something actually happen. So we need to put that inside of a set of brackets, and we're going to go ahead and type in another name. This is going to be the spawner, and colon, and then we're going to type in the wave 1 spawners, which we could come up here and just grab this one. So we can copy that, come down here below, and paste that in there. So what this is doing is saying, this right here, we're going to go ahead and pack into one single little object. And at the end of this, we want to make sure that we have a colon to end the for loop. Now, you may have noticed that this hasn't really gone away, or in fact, it kind of came back. So let's figure out what's going on. So I'm going to take my cursor, and if I hover over this, we're going to get an error message. And specifically, the thing that I'm looking for is this right here. It says it's expecting a type of question mark agent. So what does that actually mean? Well, if we go over to UEFN, we know that this trigger right here can actually be triggered by an agent, which can either be a player or it could be one of these guys as well. Or it could even be a vehicle. So that's why it's actually asking for this specific information. So to address that issue, we need to go ahead and pass in some information, essentially just the agent. So in this case, I can go ahead and just click in here and type in the word agent. And we'll add a space, and then a colon, and then another space, and in this case we'll put in that question mark, and then lowercase agent. Like so. So now that it's nice and happy, we can move on to the next part. And that next part involves these guys right here. Remember how we want these to have like a 50-50 chance of actually spawning a creature? That's what the next line of code is going to allow us to do. So at the end of line 20, let's go ahead and hit enter. And inside of this for loop, you can see that it is indented. We're going to type in the word ran. And then we're going to say space, and we'll add in a colon equals, and then we'll say get random int. And then inside of these brackets, we'll put a 0, comma, and a 1. So what's happening here is that we are going to choose one of two numbers, two integers, a 0 or a 1. So we're going to choose one randomly. So it's a 50-50 chance. It's like a coin toss. But wait, there's an error right here. So let's talk about this error and what we can do to address it. So just like before, if we hover over this with our cursor, we get an error message. And if I move my cursor up here, I'm going to go ahead and highlight this section right here. And what it's saying is that, hey, we're looking for information inside of this specific library, and we don't have it yet. It needs to be added to the party. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this, and then up here on line 5, let's go ahead and give ourselves another line, and then going ahead and paste this information in there. And these little sections that we see up here at the top, though we haven't talked about them, are incredibly important. They're libraries. So if we want to add functionality to our verse code, for example, actually working with random numbers, we need to actually have the information that is inside of this library. So the takeaway from this is that if you're getting an error when you have to use a library and you don't have it actually added, you can figure out what it is by simply copying and pasting information from the error code. Okay, now that we've actually flipped the coin, we need to tell the code what to actually do. So let's go ahead and add in another line down here, hit enter, and let's go ahead and type in the word if. So if we get the random number 1 or 0, we want to do something. So in this case, let's go ahead and just use the number 1. And at the end of this, we want to make sure that we're actually adding in that colon. And then underneath this if we get a 1, we're going to go ahead and tell that spawner to go ahead and spawn. And we'll make sure that we end it with some brackets. Okay, now that we actually have all of this written out, let's talk about what's happening. So first and foremost, the player is going to walk over this trigger. The game is actually listening for when that happens. When it does happen, the game is then going to go ahead and call this function, which is this one right here. It's going to be listening for an agent, which is quite literally the player. Then what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and look through this list of all of the creature placers that we placed here in the world. And it's going to say, for each one of those, what I want you to do is go ahead and choose a number of 1 or 0. We're flipping a coin. If you get tails, we'll call that 1. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and spawn something from each of these guys. Now, something that's kind of interesting in here is that we're actually kind of packing some things together, so let's talk about that as well. We're taking all of these creature spawners, all of these little guys that you see in this list right here, and we're packing them into one specific object. That one object, which we see down right here, we can actually just say, hey, spawn something. So it's a really cool way to take a whole bunch of information in a list and then condense it and say, on that list, just go ahead and take a 50-50 chance of everything in there and go ahead and spawn something. So here's the fun part. Now we're ready to actually test this. So let's make sure that we save. I'm just going to hit Control S. And then over here inside of UEFN, I'm going to go ahead and just save everything as well, just to be sure. And then I'm going to go ahead and push the changes right here. And we'll go ahead and test this in game as soon as it pops up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and walk over this, and we should get some baddies. Now, if we get the boss, which I didn't, they wouldn't actually do anything after I killed him because we haven't created the code for that. So hey, that worked really well. So at this point, go ahead and quit the game and start the game and test it a few times, and you should see that you get different random creatures spawning every single time. So in the next video, we're finally going to start talking about the Verse Digest and why it's incredibly helpful.